You're getting ready to watch Tim Kask, a legend in the role-playing game community, the first paid employee of TSR Hobbies. He was the editor of the Strategic Review, which eventually became The Dragon and then Dragon Magazine. He hired Kim Mohan. He was his work, it goes beyond even my ability to try to explain it all. All you have to do is Google the man's name, and there's a lot of information on this man. Tim sat down with me last night, and Tim talked about the Lost Adventures of GaryCon. More importantly, Tim talked about the basis for these two modules from GaryCon 1 and 2. He talked about the impetus of those modules, why he began attending GaryCon, and his support of the Gygax family. And you kind of get more of an intimate view of Tim's work. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you watch this video. It's about 30 minutes long, but if you're a lover of gaming, he's quite a cool guy to listen to. So I welcome you with me tonight is Tim Kask. And tonight, Tim's going to talk a little bit about Lost Adventures of GaryCon, where he got the two first adventure modules for GaryCon 1 and 2 at. He's going to give you a little history behind it. So, Tim, I'm just going to kind of sit back, enjoy it, and let you do the talking.
Okay. Thank you. I've been out of the business for about 20 years, roughly, give or take a year, when I wrote these. However, I had not been out of fantasy gaming in that I had been heavily involved with a software game that was turn-based strategy, a board game with pretty graphics, called Worlds of Wonder, yeah. And the game was an orphan for several years, but it had such an enormous fan base that they kept it alive. And they did this with mods. Mods were when you went in, because it was open code, they went in and they modified stuff. So uniforms turned different colors. There was all sorts of mods in there. You could play Glorantha from Red Bear, White Moon in that and whatever. And at one point, somebody who is anonymous, I guess, known only as Dwiggs, DWIGGS, made a magnificent mod that virtually everybody in the hobby, in the fandom, adopted. And then I was approached by one of the people who was updating that because it needed a little. And we were going to expand it, he said. And then I said, okay, what do you need? And he said, well, I need new races and I need new monsters and, units and what have you. And so he sent me 4 sprites, very crude little sprites of things he had in mind. And an hour and a half later, I sent him back 4 brand new races. I had no idea where they'd come out of my head. I had heroes. I had everything he needed in like 90 minutes. And it freaked us both out. So I ended up doing a whole lot more work on the Dwiggs mod update. And I still now play the game. It got bought back up by one of the originals. And I had gotten a taste for creative fantasy again. I was doing what they called maps. We'd call a scenario or even a module. And so I was creating those all the way along. And the juices began to flow. And I had never been a creator as such at TSR. I was an editor. Now that meant I had to create bridge material and explanatory material and stuff like that to hold pieces together, but not just make something out of whole cloth. All right, bring it up to closer to the first GaryCon. I'd gone to the last 2 Lake Geneva game conventions that the Troll Lord guys came up to Lake Geneva and held a con, at which Gary, reigned. And so I'd come up and we'd gotten back together, even had breakfast on the porch one morning with him and his wife. And then he passed. Well, I wasn't able to make it to his funeral because we had, down here in Cincinnati, we had a blizzard raging. And so I couldn't make it to Wisconsin. But the first informal GaryCon was like GaryCon 0.0, was a bunch of people got together after the funeral and went and played some games together, I believe up in the old Legion Hall, where we had many events in past years. So then it was decided we're going to do a GaryCon, and members of the family got in touch with me and said, "Yeah, we're going to have a con that honors our dad, and we'd like you to be a part of it." And I said, "And would you like to be a part of it?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "As long as I'm able to get there, I'll come every time you run it."
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, now here's what I've committed to. So I decided I needed to write an adventure. Now, back then, I was much more lethal. And I figured that in fact, I knew that many people that come to play in a convention game come to play not like they'd play their character that they've been nurturing along for the last 7.5 months. They come to either make a glorious discovery or have a glorious death. Either way, it's a good story to take home to their group and tell about. Yep. So I thought, okay, if that's what you're looking for, I can give it. So the first one has a whole bunch, I guess you'd call them Easter eggs. In fact, this is the book isn't the first one. I published one that looked a lot like the top half of this on my own. And I had this great racket going doing these and gave it up when I went to, when we went to form Eldritch Wizardry.
That's Tower of the Mad Wizard, right?
Yes, I wrote it in 2009. And it's loaded with local references. All right. Number one, that you're off to rescue the children of the Great Egg, EGG, which everybody that was in on the joke knew there was E. Gary Gygax. And I had all the children named, and one of them has fallen under the enchantment of the evil dudes and is a real pain in the ass. There's geographical references that all have ties to Walworth County, which is where Lake Geneva is. And so I did it for the family because, they would know, they would catch all these references. Mm-hmm. And except one of them gets eaten before the game even starts. Yeah. And it's lethal. It's lethal as hell. I wrote it for old school play. Old school play, the number one prerogative in old school play is attaining information. Ask questions. Don't just say, I'm looking at the walls. Tell me that you're going to go search the walls looking for anything funny. Mm-hmm. Ask me what the walls are made of. Okay, I mean, you need information. Check to see, is the floor sloping, and all these kinds of things that you need to ask. Don't assume.
Yep.
Well, this one has a couple of places in it where if you make an assumption and it's likely to be wrong, I've yet to have a group that I've run this for at any convention ever, and it's only been a few. Has not made a really bad assumption about 2/3 into the game and ended up getting wiped out. Mm-hmm. And it's all because they made an assumption. They didn't think it through. I write thinking adventures. Mm-hmm. I do not write killer adventures. I do not create killer monsters. If I create a monster, it has a weak spot. If I write an adventure, you can think your way around just about anything in it. Certainly anything of consequence. I didn't set out to write Temple of Elemental Evil. Mm-hmm. I set out to write a really tough adventure. But it's not Temple of Elemental Evil. Good Lord, no. It's not even one wing. But you got to think your way through. And great risk, great reward, as there is. So it got a lot of buzz because I think the first time 3 times I ran it at GaryCon, it was TPK. Mm-hmm. And so people were talking about this lethal adventure. But again, people don't play at cons the same way they play at home. They're under time constraint. They rush. They don't think things through. They make bad mistakes, and they make assumptions. So, okay, comes next year. Time to write another adventure. Oh, geez, this is only the second one I've now had to write, and that became Return to the Frozen North, which was a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that I was very skeptical of running a convention in Lake Geneva in March. I had lived there for 6 winters. Now, as an aside, yeah, they've had phenomenal luck. Phenomenal luck. And not getting dumped on during the con. We've had a few snowstorms, but nothing horrendous. So, okay, we're going to go again. And this time I decided to go really out off the wall. So I created a couple of monsters in it. I like to write for a biome that I don't think has been exploited well enough or understood well enough. That's why I wrote the Ardondos, which was all jungle. And in this one, in the second one I wrote here for GaryCon, it was the frozen north, literally. Trek across a glacier. Find your way through a glacier to get to the rest of the glacier. And it's full of winding round tunnels, like wormholes, except if you're real unlucky, you'll find out to your horror and fear that, oh no, that wasn't a worm that made that. But again, Return to the North, oh, all right, let's make it cold, let's make it blurry, and a whole bunch of challenges. How do you mark where you've been in a warren of tunnels when it's ice and always liquid, just at the stage of melting? And then, of course, the wind howls through and it freezes stuff. So, oh, well, I don't know. So it's new challenges, something new. The severe cold, Arctic conditions, things like that. I wanted to make it something you got to ask some questions about, not something you've gone and seen before or played before, or anything like that. It's as different as I could make it, and I'll tell you what, I made up 2 monsters in this things that are bad news.
Yes,
One
you did.
Completely out of my distorted mind, and because I had to come up with how all these holes came around. And the other one is taking a childhood fairy tale and turning it into a very, it's not even Twilight Zone. It's more like Outer Limits story.
Yep.
And I like to do that when it's just for fun, like this. These are fun. They're con adventures. They're difficult to play. There's great risk and great reward, particularly in the first one. But I want to write, and I feel I did, something that's going to require you to think. It's amazing how many wonderful spells there are out there that, nobody ever uses. And back when I wrote these, I was still pretty much playing by the book. But even so, nobody ever, in the one place that's so horrifyingly brutal, no one has ever thought to perform a rather simple spell.
Yep.
That would prevent all that from happening, most likely. And so I want players to think. I want players to get a little freeze-on of fear every once in a while. I don't give standard same old monsters. I don't want to go in, that's a something or other, and it's got an armor class of 4, and blah, 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 blah. No, I want them to come up against something that's going to cause them to think, something that can kill them if they don't, because you got to have risk for great reward, and I believe in great rewards and great risks, but I write for a thinking party, and no good DM is going to say, quit asking me questions.
I agree.
After a while, when you're bugging him, he's going to start giving you more and more obscure and oblique answers.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, that's part of the game too.
Yep.
You aren't playing 20 questions in the dungeon. But when you go into a room, you can ask 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
A smart party will. What's the floors made out of? What's the walls made out of? What's the ceiling look like?
Mm-hmm.
And you see, back, I hate saying back in the day, but back when my version of the game was played, there was somebody, every room they went into, take my Carbondale group. Somebody always was checking the walls. Somebody was always checking the floors. It was just automatic. They went in. I knew that Hobbit was doing this, and I knew Werebear was doing that, and I knew that Doug, I knew who was doing what. And so if there was something there to be found, and maybe they found it, probably they found it, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
But they were asking questions. I see too many groups go in, look around, go, okay, and let's go on somewhere else. Like they're, well, I once made a really pathetic song using Simon and Garfunkel's "It's All Happening at the Zoo," because it's kind of like that. It's like just going from enclosure to enclosure and killing them. So I don't like that kind of play.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to give them reasons not to play like that, but to be smart, ask questions. And not enough people do that now. They expect their abilities or their skills or something to just automatically give them a warm, fuzzy glow in the back of their neck. And they, oh, that's a magical elfin fire starter.
Mm-hmm.
No, burn yourself a couple of times trying to figure out what the hell it is.
And that's exactly these adventures do.
That's why Gary used to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If we fooled around with something we didn't understand, and if the dice said so, well, it hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to do that. I don't think you need to mollycoddle the players. I don't mollycoddle the players here. But if you're smart, on your toes, and think it through, of course you can go through these.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing about you. You definitely, they're tough. You challenge the players, but you make the players think. And if they think,
well, that's what I want. I think when you spend more time thinking, at the same time, you're probably having more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're thinking right, you're discovering. And if you're discovering, your party's progressing, doing well, and you're all having more fun. And it's, it's that easy. Think. These are thinking adventures.
Mm-hmm.
It's not puzzles. No, I don't do that crap. It's not riddles. I don't do that kind of stuff either. That's too morbid and too nasty. I'm sure I could make up a riddle that nobody would know the answer to.
Probably.
What good would that be?
There's also something else you do in these things.
I just rather give you something you can kill yourself.
You put obscure wording in them that you hopefully will force the players to look up what the word means.
Oh yes, I did that in these especially.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little funny thing. It's a little secret cabal type thing that Gary and I did. We put in big words whenever we could, and we figured, well, if they got to look up a couple, 3 of them, we did our job right.
Yep.
But it also made them more intelligent because they now had 2 or 3 new words that they knew how to use. So we were improving their vocabulary. It was our duty, our mission to improve the players' vocabularies. So yeah, there might be a couple in there. Again, there's a perversion of a folk myth, of a people's folk myth that I twisted into something in the return.
Mm-hmm.
I like to take a little bit of truth or a little hint out of it and then weave my own web with it.
Yep.
I think you ought to play them. I'm going to be running them. I'm going to run each one once at GaryCon. I'm going to run each one twice at Wizard Tower Con.
Mm-hmm.
And here's your chance to know what's going to happen to you before it does.
That's right. And
Because I can promise you, no matter how well you read it,
oh yeah,
stuff happens. I'm continually amazed at the ingenuity, sometimes crackpot, of players, particularly at cons. Well, I think I'll try. You go, what? Okay, and somehow or other it works.
Well, it allows them because they don't have the emotional investment that they have with their player characters that they use.
That's right. That's right. So they're willing to try weird shit. Mm-hmm. However, if you're going to put this into your campaign, you can think it through. You can work it through. Mm-hmm. This is something you don't have to play and get through all in 4 hours. Mm-hmm. Believe me, there's much more here than just a 4-hour game at a con. Much more. Mm-hmm. When you run a game at a con, you have to kind of have to bastardize it. An adventure, pull out one piece of it and run that piece. Mm-hmm. Well, I never got to play all of it. Usually because they killed themselves before they got to the end.
Yeah, they kind of spoiled your fun.
No, I don't set out to kill parties. I don't feel bad if they kill themselves. Mm-hmm. I share their joy if they make it through something harrowing. Mm-hmm. Certainly, because that means we all had a really good time around the table. And that's my thing. If you're not having fun, you aren't doing it right.
That's right.
Or the opposite is true. Okay, if you're having fun, you are doing it right.
Yep.
However that fun came about, laughing at yourself, laughing at the players, getting the players. The most fun is when you get the players to laugh at themselves along with you. Mm-hmm. And that's what I set out to do. Think. Mm-hmm. Think.
Yeah, I mean, and the nice thing is, in this package, you not only get the hardcover book that has, both of these original adventures in it, along with new monsters and new classes and such, but you get the soft cover, which is basically direct scans of your 2 original GaryCon.
Yeah, modules. And you'll see how little I wrote to be able to run these. Okay, everything that I ever wrote for a con that I had to go back and do for publication, I had to go back and fluff out 40%. There's not a lot in here. There's everything you need. Don't get me wrong. The bad guys, the good guys, all that kind of stuff. But at cons, you don't have to write a lot of background.
Yeah.
How did we all find ourselves here? Mm-hmm. When you're working it into your campaign, that's a whole different story, and that's however the DM does it. Mm-hmm. But in this, it's like, okay, here we are. Here's the task. Here's the mission. And I don't remember, but I think I used pre-gens with these that were 7th and 8th and 9th level. Now that's old school OD&D into 1st edition AD&D 7th, 8th, and 9th levels. Mm-hmm. Because back then I played it by the book as far as what clerics could do and that, and I play clerics a whole lot differently now. But that was considered a tough party. In old school, a party of those numbers of those levels was considered tough.
Yeah.
Because when I design a game or an adventure, I use numbers of hit dice. Mm-hmm. How many are the players likely to have? Well, I got to give them pre-gens to know. Okay, now how many hit dice of bad guys am I going to put in? Can't just be 1-on-1. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't be 2-on-1. Should be at least 3 or 4. Not all at once, obviously. Mm-hmm. But depending upon how you handle experience, there's got to be enough there to make it worthwhile, not just loot. Because I never gave gold pieces experience on a 1-on-1 ever. I thought that was the silliest thing ever. So,
how did you deal with a 1-on-1 then?
Well, hit points were hit. You know, if you killed a monster, if you and your 5 buddies all killed 6 monsters that were worth a total of X number of hit points, everybody got a share of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I didn't even ever have one thing that was so big and so bad that it was likely to wipe out a good chunk of the party.
Mm-hmm.
But if I put in a couple, 3 things in there, all right, instead of using an elephant, using 2 Cape buffalo, I could probably get the same effect or more. But the Cape buffalo by themselves aren't nearly as impressive as that elephant.
Yep.
But they can sure mess you up quicker. So that's kind of my approach. 3.5 to 1 ratio of stuff to kill in the adventure versus what I expect the party to be. Now that's a little harder to do when you go and plug it into your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you're going to plug it in as, where it's going to fit in your campaign. If your campaign has still got everybody down around 3rd, 4th, 5th level, well, you might want to wait on this one a little while before you set out to tackle it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, everybody plays experience different.
Mm-hmm.
It got to be that I would just say, okay, we didn't count up every week, every adventure. We didn't do that. But, 3 or 4 later, okay, time to count up. Yeah, okay. Everybody went up a level and 30% of the next. Mm-hmm. And that's why we did it. And it was usually pretty close to what they'd actually earned. Even though, you know, this class needed this much to go up and this class needed that much. Well, okay, everybody went up. And it didn't single anybody out in the party to be the weak link. Even though they didn't have a lot of hit points, they still had another level's worth of hit points. Mm-hmm. And I kind of always played it that way. And when it came to allocating experience and gold, they were welcome. Treasure, they're welcome to argue it out themselves. I didn't care. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter to me because I wasn't giving them Now, if they found a really huge cache of rare gems and managed to get them somewhere where they cashed them in, yeah, they all got some experience for that. Mm-hmm. But not necessarily the value of the gems, just some. You know, maybe it was 40,000 gold pieces worth of gems. Mm-hmm. Well, they all got some experience points. And that's where the odd, you know, everybody goes up a level. Well, they go up a level and they keep their odd points. So all of a sudden I put them up a level and they got enough odd points. No, they went up too. That's okay. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I don't care how the level progression goes. That's not the fun part of the game. Is the mechanics isn't the fun part. The doing it is the fun part.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, just that's the way I wrote these. Mm-hmm. Let's go have fun doing them.
Mm-hmm. And what's nice about the entire Lost Adventures of GaryCon is, you know, they get your original adventures. They get 18 new monsters, 6 new classes. They get new magical items. They get, even if they don't have their own setting, there's a world setting in the front end of the hardcover book. Yeah,
we've at the time being there's a temporal rift, and that setting is on your world. Someday, if I live long enough, I'll develop my own world and put it back in place where it was supposed to be. But it doesn't matter, and I'm not going to take credit for the new character classes and stuff like that. That's entirely your part, your input. I wrote 2 old school D&D adventures with old school monsters and old school player characters playing them. Mm-hmm. I know that when I hand out pre-gens, because I have 2 sets that I use now, low levels, and then I have some high ones. They're pretty badass people. They've got. I spent a lot of time creating them, with stories on how they got this artifact or they have that artifact, or I tried to put them together. So they're very puissant, formidable. Try to say formidable in French. Formidable. No, I don't think that's right. Anyway, they're pretty substantial characters in terms of old school levels of play, where everything was the way some. And hey, if you're playing a newer version and having fun, that's fine. Ignore me. But what I see today is kind of like when pinball started getting bowdlerized. Used to be the pinball machines had 4 or 5 digits. That's all, because they were scoring 1 points or 5 points. And then they had, okay, now they got 5 digits because they're scoring 100 points or 10 points. Okay. Well, then all of a sudden, in the mid-'80s, pinball machines all had 7, 8 digits and 13 extra bells and whistles and extra balls in play and lanes all over. And they screwed up a basically great game, much like the one I have in my basement. But they screwed it up. I have a 5-digit machine. Okay. And you don't need all those extra digits. It's certainly not to have fun. And I'm the same way in what I write. You don't need all those extra digits.
No, you don't. Sometimes
so you earn what you get in my games, in my adventures. You earn what you get, and most of the times that's good, and sometimes it's not. But you earned it. Yep. Not my fault.
Right.
That's about all I got to say. How long? Geez, this has been a long time.
Yep. Well, you know what? Thanks for talking about the history of...
Yeah, you guys ought to look into this book. And, I mean, the book itself is beautiful. It's got other stuff. If you're looking to start up a campaign of your own, if you're thinking about starting out as a DM, you can do a lot worse than picking this book up, picking it, just plug into somewhere in that world and then make that world your own and create your own mythology about it. But it's a starting place.
Yes.
And sometimes that's the first thing to get going, is a starting place. And there it is. And you may have to wait a little while before your players are tough enough to take on these adventures. But
yeah,
you've got a place to build your campaign. And that takes a whole lot of weight off your mind, because it's you burn a lot of calories in your brain developing a world. Even developing an extensive adventure background. That's you burn a lot of mental juices.
Yep.
So hey, we'll take it off your hands.
Yep. And what we'll do is we'll put a link to Lost Adventures of GaryCon in the description down below in this video. So if anyone would like to go ahead and get a copy of it, they can go and pick a copy of it up. So.
Okay,
Tim?
You and I'll talk a minute when you cut off.
Yep, no problem. Tim, I will appreciate this. I mean,
no problem.
Getting the kind of the back end of everything that's going on and everything. So, everybody, thanks for tuning into our video tonight.
I want people to enjoy my adventure. It's fun.
Yeah.
I don't write these things to be torturous.
Yeah.
I write them to be fun. Yeah. I write them to make people think. See, I'm an old teacher. I'm an ex-teacher. I want people to think.
Yep.
Thinking is an undervalued skill nowadays. That's as far as I'll go in that direction.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning into our video tonight. I'm Don. This is Tim. And we will both catch you guys later.